Bad Boy Bubby is one fucked up film. I love it. It's like Bubble Boy, but without the Blink 182 playing ad nauseum and that politically incorrect humour that didn't age well. Thankfully it differs with somewhat progressive takes, while maintaining some dark comedy in between.
Jesus fucking Christ, get that fucking thing out of here, you mad bastard! What?
I don't like fucking smart.
Bad Boy Bubby is an Australian cult classic. Even critics who don't like this film at all realise this. Its worth seems to increase over time, like that bottle of wine that you forgot to put the 25-year sticker on 24 years ago. Although it's gotten some AACTA awards and some others. One single book dedicated to it called Bad Boy Bubby Controversies. It was the second highest grossing film in Norway in 2004. That one reference in that one Rick and Morty episode.
No, absolutely not!
But that's where all the people and the animals are.
Yeah, but you can't go out there because the air is poisonous for you. You will die you'll die instantly if you ever leave this house. You hear me?
For real?
For real times a million, buddy.
And has its following from word of mouth over the years.
Anyway, Paul Miller has written in. From Sydney, I guess? I sent you guys Bad Boy Bubby. It's an Aussie movie. Sick as fuck, eh? Ha ha ha, glad you boys love the sickness from down under. Hey, here's the guy who sent Bad Boy Bubby. Paul Miller, what's up?
Hey, by Chan.
Huh? Hi, Paul. Is this like a cult film down there?
Well, no, I'd never heard of it before. I heard of it through a bloke who's a mechanic who banged two of his own cousins. But yeah, I just heard about it. He used to show it to everyone who came over to his house. I saw it and thought it'd be right up your bloke's alley.
In Norway, I was at a festival because of another film, a Norwegian film that I was in, and this we were at the opening of a film and a band was about to start playing, so it was going to be very loud. And this man came up to me and started talking to me, and he'd seen the film Bad Boy Bubby 13 times and he wanted to talk about it. And so he grabbed me and threw me up against the wall and started shouting, "Fuck you, God! Fuck you, God!
Fuck you, God."
And then the security guard pulled him off and dragged him backwards out the tent like this, and he was still going, "Fuck you, God!" As he was dragged out the tent. And you think, this is one cult film.
This will be a video dissecting why it was such a difficult film to recommend or screen due to its ability to repulse people in many ways. Yet it can be a strangely positive, extraordinarily memorable and fairly humanising film all the same. The story begins with no music, and in less than a minute in, a full front nude shot of Bubby getting washed with a sponge by his mother. Nudity is normalised, the living conditions are scruffy and small. Bubby's relationship with his mother is abusive and sexual. We learn very quickly that Bubby is a middle-aged man who has been convinced that the air outside is poisonous, so he's never left this decrepit home, which is the only world he knows. All of his speech is an imitation of his mother's, and he takes everything literally. He also imitates the way a cat would behave by meowing and hissing, as well as dismembering and playing with a cockroach. He wonders why the cat didn't have a gas mask if he came from the outside world, which his mother declares because the cat doesn't breed. He ends up wrapping the cat in cling film. Upon mummifying the cat completely, he doesn't understand that the cat is dead. But his world is going to expand pretty quickly. Pop, a priest who is Bubby's father, who visits and resumes his relationship with Bubby's mother. Bubby attempts to suffocate his father because he doesn't understand how he entered without a gas mask. He then attempts to imitate Pop by reenacting his way of seducing his mother. After getting kicked out and panicking, he is left outside and is eventually given the mask. After waking up to realise his mother lied about being able to breathe outside, he proceeds to have a mental breakdown, destroying the place. His mother and Pop torment him further. He then cling wraps them both before heading into the outside world. As we quickly see, he was living in an industrial state in Adelaide, South Australia. His first encounters with others begin to implement his reactions that follow onward to a bizarre series of unusual events. From getting intimate with a member of the Salvation Army, to working in a band, to being in prison, to fronting that band, to helping people with cerebral palsy, and many more things. Anyone who has seen this film knows there's so much more to what happens after the first half hour. In order to reanalyse this film, I'm going to discuss two teams in one part, two other teams in part 2, all of them unified into a core team in part 3, and a background analysis that examines the making of the film and how the process developed the way we see this film today. Part 1. Disability and Trauma. It's safe to say the skeleton of this film is the themes of disability and trauma joined together. Nicholas Hope would have spent his time studying the behaviour of autistic people and cats, which would inspire the improvised behaviour of Bubby. Features of this would show in his walk, his crippled social and emotional understanding.
Those wonderfully fattening chocolate eclairs, please, Sam. Thank you, sweetie.
Yes.
2 of those wonderfully fattening chocolate eclairs, please, Sam.
$2, thanks.
Thank you, sweetie.
No, that'll be $2, thanks, buddy.
2 of those wonderfully fattening chocolate eclairs, please, Sam. Thank you, sweetie.
His intense immersion with both music and sounds,
Fucking idiot, go on, get out of it!
and his repetition of other people and animals throughout the entire film.
Get off the road, you fucking greedy bastard! You little bastard, will you? You fucking hooked up bastard!
Get off the fucking road, you fucking greedy bastard!
Yes, mate, can I help you?
Come on though, that barking part is some Ted Bear level shit.
Nature!
As someone with Asperger's who spent a fair bit of time in special ed due to it, in addition to anger management and language difficulties, this film did resonate with me in parts. It is left open for debate whether Bubby is intended to have any particular disability or not, as the abusive relationship with his ma certainly conditions a lot of his behaviours, quite literally to the point he is convinced it's okay to grope women by the tits until a bunch of them kick the shit out of him for it. I'd argue he is autistic, because many of the behavioural boxes are ticked in addition to his trauma. It can be difficult to separate the two, and this film definitely demonstrates the blur. This film can propose the difficult question of how do you know if someone's conditioned to have a mental illness, or if it's purely caused by mental illness? My answer to that is you can tell in someone's unguarded moments a lot of the time. With Bubby, you can see his attempts to adapt to all sorts of characters that are in his world. But even when he is by himself or seemingly content, his behaviour is primarily the same, right to the ending, where he is running around with his 2 children just as he did when he seen a child for the first time.
Little.
It is unambiguous that Bubby is traumatised by being conditioned in such an alien way for 35 years in addition to being raped in prison. However, disability is inevitably a theme within this film too. Bubby has the uncanny ability to communicate with people with cerebral palsy.
She said cat be dead. Is cat dead?
Yes, cat's dead. What did she say?
She say you name be Angel.
Oh my God.
What he seems to empathise with is the inability to communicate with others as effectively as people without any disability. He even goes as far to replicate how people with cerebral palsy move and talk on stage too.
That got you too. It's the animal for you.
Completely oblivious to how that could be taken as offensive, and being completely unaware of social dynamics in a general sense is certainly a telling trait of autism too. We never get any diagnostic on Bubby's character other than Pop calling him a weirdo and a loony, and the very question of what disorder does Bubby have has never been answered. I believe autism is inherently in Bubby's character due to Nicholas Hope's acting method. But if Rolf the Here's as wise as your boy David Lynch for not spoiling mysteries or answering questions...
Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
We'll elaborate on that.
No.
He may never give an answer to this question, as leaving it unanswered will leave weirdos like me pondering, analysing and debating the answer to my fucking grave. Part 2. Cats and Catholicism. Cats and their place in this film is what certainly granted the level of infamy surrounding the film on the surface. After all, you do see a cat get mummified with cling wrap. The grand controversy surrounding the fact that the cat mummified was euthanized in order for that scene to be the way it is. Despite the cruel fate cats meet in this film, it is strongly emphasised that Bubby cares a lot about cats, and even replicates how they behave by playing with cockroaches and hissing defensively. Any aggressive behaviour projected towards the cat is often a reflection of his ma's treatment to him. But the tragedy of this is Bubby doesn't realise that projecting his ma's behaviour isn't exactly the right way to care for what he cares about, that he actually has been cared about the wrong way the whole time, and really says on a crippling and traumatic level that he is manipulated to think love is abusive, that that's the way love is. When Bubby is sent to prison for groping and harassing Angel and is alone in the cell, his behaviour of tampering with cockroaches happens for the second time. It takes the police officer to intervene and knock over a setup of the cockroach's dismemberment for him to stop. Bubby finds a kitten later on in the film and goes out of the way to feed the kitten pizza. After he performed with his band, he adamantly leaves the band to see if the kitten is okay. But to his shock, the kitten is killed by 3 people who he didn't scare off in time. With more of an understanding of death, he is immediately upset. He carries the cat with him until it is confirmed dead by Angel. We see later on, a grave is made for the kitten. When he is performing with his band at one point, we see him hitting a toy animal sellotape to a stick with a wooden spoon. Not to mention the meowing and hissing of a cat often makes it into his performances too.
Get him! Get him! Get him! Jesus Christ! Get that fucking thing out of here, you mad bastard! Get off the fucking road, you greedy bastard! Look at that silly bastard, would you? You pooped bastard!
At the very end of the film, you can see Angel holding a cat, incidentally showing that cats have been featured in this film from the beginning right to the end. Catholicism is an extremely prominent theme throughout the entire film. Bubby is told quite quickly that if poison won't get him, God will, or Jesus will. Out of the sheer fear of God or Jesus watching, and his belief that he'd be wrong to move from a table, we see him glance at the crucifix and piss himself. When Pop arrives, we see very quickly that he is a priest by the collar. Bubby quickly takes to Pop and replicating his behaviour while dressing like him, including the collar. When Bubby discovers the scientist playing the organ in the damaged church and vocalises his concerns with God, the scientist takes him to a power station and gives him a very hateful speech towards God on the condition that God actually exists.
You see, no one is going to help you, Bubby, because there isn't anybody out there to do it. No one. We're all just complicated arrangements of atoms and subatomic particles. We don't live. But our atoms do move about in such a way as to give us identity and consciousness. We don't die. Our atoms just rearrange themselves. there is no God. There can be no God. It's ridiculous to think in terms of a superior being. An inferior being, maybe, because we who don't even exist, we arrange our lives with more order and harmony than God ever arranged the earth. We measure, we plot, we create wonderful music. We are the architects of our own existence. What a lunatic concept to bow down before a God who slaughters millions of innocent children, who slowly and agonizingly starves them to death, beats them, tortures them, rejects them. What folly to even think that we should not insult such a God. Damn him! Think him out of existence. It is our duty to think God out of existence. It is our duty to insult him. Fuck you, God. Strike me down if you dare, you tyrant. You non-existent fraud. It is the duty of all human beings to think God out of existence. Then we have a future. Because then, and only then, do we take full responsibility for who we are. And that's what you must do, Bubby. Think God out of existence. Take responsibility for who you are.
This influences Bubby's hate towards the religion.
Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Goodbye, Cat. There. She's happy with God now.
It is the duty of all human beings to think God out of existence.
And he reflects that speech when Angel's parents use Catholicism to pick on her in such a way. Bubby stands up to the very idea of God itself, just to declare Angel as beautiful.
Wouldn't he? But he didn't. God doesn't like fat people. Fat people are an abomination in his eyes.
Fuck you, God. Strike me down if you dare. Angel would be beautiful. God would be a useless cunt.
Bubby is introduced to other forms of spirituality by a member of the band while being told he shouldn't try to be pop to escape himself. My educated guess is that it's implied he's done with religion regardless, because he doesn't really engage with any other religions throughout the entirety of the film. Part 3. Perception. Perception is fundamental to the direction of the film and its characters. When the film begins, you are given a raw, vulgar look at Bubby's extremely mundane and isolated world. His world expands as a cat is introduced, and it doubles when Pop arrives. Throughout the first 30 minutes, we are shown how observing Bubby can actually be within this world, and how his observations motivate his conclusions. Once he leaves, he is immersed with the sounds and characters around him. Plenty of scenes have the background world significantly loud, and the use of music is kept fairly minimal, giving any use of music a great significance. Bubby's perception is constantly reaching out in an attempt to empathise with others by replicating behaviours and situations he gets immersed in. We see him become immersed with the Salvation Army, the chainsaw, the printing office that nearly makes him faint, the violinist, the band, the scientist who plays the organ, his past experiences while he is on stage, and of course Angel from the very first scene that she appears in within the film. So yeah, lots of immersion. Death in itself, as the very concept we generally understand, doesn't begin to form properly to Bubby's mind. From the beginning, he is only convinced to be afraid of it. Fear doesn't kill his curiosities though. He attempts to see what would happen if he can't breathe with the cling wrap, and quickly learns that he cannot suffocate by his own hand. Based on what his ma has told him, he doesn't understand how cling wrapping the cat has actually killed it, hence being baffled by its permanent state of unconsciousness. When he figures out Florence lied about being able to leave without a gas mask, he has a mental breakdown followed by more torment. When Florence and Pop are asleep, he seems to treat it as putting them into a long sleep rather than the ultimatum of death with the cling film, even as far as just to say, be still.
You be still too.
That's probably why he also brought the cat with him too, since he never got to learn that cats actually do breed. When he is at the table with the band, he recognises his parents in the newspaper, but he doesn't understand that he has killed them, even though the band piece it together pretty quickly. When he eventually finds a tracing on the ground where the bodies were in his home, he proceeds to cry with remorse upon realising that his parents are indefinitely gone. When Bubby's newfound kitten is killed, he again becomes upset and begins to cry. Still wrestling with the concept of death, he asks for Angel's confirmation on its death. As I said before, Bubby has the unique ability to completely understand people with cerebral palsy. There's no direct explanation for it, but it certainly demonstrates the peak of Bubby's level of observation, and how well he can truly understand people that are challenged in that area of communication. As Bubby learns more about the world around him, he attempts to change his identity, demanding that the band call him Pop instead. This can be taken as an attempt to escape the misunderstandings that he can't take back as Bubby with the means to reinvent himself. Eventually, a band member does confront him on this, to face himself as Bubby, and not to cling wrap again. Although these previously mentioned themes are strong within the film, they only show to be somewhat stronger when considering the making of this film. The script for this film was a series of ideas, and a great amount of this film was aided by circumstance and local connections. From the get-go, our protagonist, Nicholas Hope, was not Rolf's first choice in mind for playing the role as Bubby, but he ended up seeing a short film that he was in called Confessor Caresser, where he plays a manic serial killer rapist that overjoys in describing his encounters with his victims.
I'd like people to call me the Confessor Caresser.
He then called Nicholas Hope anonymously to see if he'd like to play Bubby in the film, which of course he did in the end. The film was initially just going to be called Bubby, but the Bad Boy Bubby blues song that was made up by the band in the truck ended up catching on, and arguably gives the film more charm with the use of the alliteration. About this cat again, it was indeed euthanized and served as a prop until the comical petrol station robbery scene. Time and time again, it's been commonly misinterpreted that the film crew were the reason the cat was euthanized when it was sent to the Australian Animal Welfare League after the scenes it was alive. Many of the cats they hold are feral, as there is an epidemic of feral cats in Australia as it is. Upon their belief, it's more cruel to keep feral cats contained for long periods of time rather than to have them simply put down. In addition, someone from the Australian Animal Welfare League was there to make sure the cat wasn't actually harmed on set, and it wasn't, but they were sent back the very euthanized cat rather than another dead one, which of course made for a completely authentic appearance of the dead cat. Because the film wasn't made with another dead cat in its place or a fake one, it's impossible to know if that would have taken away from it, even if it did look alike. But I'm certainly among the belief that Rolf the Hare and the crew weren't committing animal cruelty, and the kitten we seen at the dump in real life was adopted by Claire Benito, who plays Florence. Remember how I said Bubby's world doubled when Pop arrived? That was literal. The set the cast were in was half its size on purpose during the scenes before Pop was introduced. This was to give you an even more literal glance through Bubby's eyes as his world gets bigger once more people exist within it. The cast doesn't have any big name actors either. The director, Rolf the Hare, was in a band with some of the members of the band in the film in real life, and it's Rolf's brother who we see cutting down the tree. Nicholas Hope would have been wearing binaural microphones hidden in his hair. Made me think of how Marge from The Simpsons was supposed to have bunny ears beneath her hair. But unlike that, this had great significance. This truly added to the design of the film and complemented the experimental screenplays very well by giving us what Bubby would hear in all these environments. Yet, how they'd all be shot differently due to screenwriters changing from scene to scene very quickly. There was 32 screenwriters in total, putting in their own unique look of Bubby's world, which added to the incentive that Bubby's perception of the world is constantly juxtaposing at this point. Regardless of his the intention or not, Bubby seemingly carries this Oedipus complex onto Angel through his affection towards large caretaking women. Such a film would leave someone like Sigmund Freud interested.
Whoa!
All motherfucker memes aside, this film was shot in a linear way. This meant the cast would move from one location to the next with very few places being revisited throughout the entire film. At one point, Bubby entered a damaged church. The church being damaged was a fitting coincidence for the making of this film. as Bubby entering a damaged church right before he is given the anti-God speech is a strong introduction to Bubby's newfound disdain for Christianity. At the scene where Bubby arrives at the care place for people with cerebral palsy, he presents the kitten that we assume is the dead one from the dump, but it is actually a different cat that is actually dead and headless that was provided to the film cast. It's also worth noting that scene where the kitten is supposed to be dead, that the kitten was tranquilized and they had a vet on site. Again, don't think they were being cruel animals here. The director gives credit of the entirety of the sequence at the care place to Rachel and Marilla in the DVD commentary, which was not originally in the script, but definitely worked within the film. Rachel in real life spent 18 years in a cot with solid sides due to people assuming that she was a vegetable. So for her to have her involvement in this very film that focuses on characters being misunderstood and withheld from the world is somewhat wholesome and fitting. The scene where Rachel was upset due to her unrequited crush on Bubby was written by Rachel, and is loosely based on how she had a crush on a caretaker in real life who she didn't get to see anymore once it was known. Despite not having much time within the film, she certainly put her actual self in it, which is humanizing to say the least. Mind you, in Gabrielle Murray's book on the film, she states that Rachel's story was actually Heather Rose's, who was also among the cast with cerebral palsy and had been in a previous Rolf the Here film called Dance Me to My Song, and uses the Vertigo Productions website as a reference, although I couldn't find it on the website myself. Interestingly enough, the ending as we know could have been completely different to the original. Very near to the release of the film, it was an uncertainty if the death penalty was going to be legalised in Australia or not. Needless to say, this pissed off Rolf the Here and made him consider making an ending where Bubby is sentenced to death for his crimes, even though some form of sentencing would have been a bit more realistic for someone who murdered a cat and 4 people, robs a shop, commits assault, at least 3 counts of sexual harassment. The ending itself holds a more wholesome means than a sinister one. I've yet to meet someone who sees Bubby as just a serial killer, because technically he is. The entire cast of the film succeeded greatly in immersing the viewer into Bubby's world. You spent the first 30 minutes going what the fuck, only to watch Bubby in a what the fuck state with the outside world, creating this bizarre hook of empathy for the viewer to watch from that point to the end indefinitely. Patience and tolerance are certainly rewarded. This film is undoubtedly one of a kind. Its experimental approach was complementary to the vision making it. There isn't too many films with the strong themes this film had, and there are even less with those themes intertwined, and even less which end on a wholesome note for the protagonist with those themes considered. It is described as a black comedy drama film on Wikipedia, but I'd argue that it's a psychological thriller too, as the film makes you think and keeps the viewer on the edge of their seat for Bubby's thrilling exploration of the world. For a film with many absurd instances, it manages to appeal to life in general in a significantly profound way. Like life, it contains some very nasty shit, which the majority of people wouldn't be able to empathize with directly. And if your intentions are to make it beautiful within the eye you behold, the most valuable things in life will be a part of your own truly. The film certainly can make someone grateful for the world they live in despite the ugly things it reveals too with no hesitation. And throughout the whole film, Bubby's character is fitting to the caption on the DVD I own. All he needs is love. Bubby carries reflections of everything around him in an attempt to adapt to the world around him to make sense of the world. And upon facing the unknown, he finds love and success alongside the individuals that cared about his well-being with more understanding and respect than his family did, and the trauma he carries. His presence in his band is eye-catching and fantastic, as Bubby gives himself and his experiences to the music on stage, regardless if it is just mere avant-garde entertainment to the audience or not. There's a bit of Bubby in all of us, a curious observer and explorer that wanders the world full of people that can be all the same yet different just as much, reminding us that there's always something we could be learning. Through our own actions and others, we may make some mistakes, but good intentions can be rewarded no matter what you believe in. This film demonstrates how such an absurd character can get past the absurdities of life, both their own and the others that have projected on them. It shows the best parts of us will keep going to reach the state of being content, no matter what. So if there's anything we can learn from this film other than not to cling wrap living things, is to have hope. Thank you for watching this video. This is my first ever video essay, and it's one I wanted to make for quite some time. There'll be more in the next few months. Goodbye for now.